Hey, what's up? Brian Goulet here of gouletpens.com, here for the 60th episode of Goulet Q&A. This is my weekly show where I just talk about whatever, answering questions that you have for me about fountain pens or whatever random stuff you have. Got a pretty fountain pen heavy one this week. Didn't get a lot of random questions, all pretty pen related, so that's kind of cool. Just catch you up for a couple of minutes about what I've been up to in the last couple of weeks. Last week or so, I guess, since I did the last one. I'm losing track, man. It's the holiday season. It's just crazy. We're hiring like 4 or 5 people right now. It's just crazy. Just awesome. Lots of good stuff, lots of craziness. We had our company Christmas party this past weekend. It was really fun. Had it at Maggiano's. You know, last year we did it here at work and we decorated the place and everything, but we've grown too much to be able to host it here at work anymore. So we got it hosted at Maggiano's, got a private room and all that kind of stuff. So it was really kind of cool. You know, it was like felt like a real Christmas party, you know what I mean? Because, you know, Rachel and I used to have this business in our house. So, you know, our first couple of Christmas parties, we like went out to a restaurant, just like, it was like 10 of us, you know, with significant others. And then the next year we had it at our house, you know? So it was just like, to be able to go out like that in an actual setting was kind of neat, you know, and just to get to meet everybody's significant others, you know, some of them for the first time, just get to see them again. The other ones, and then, you know, the fact that we had 100% attendance, you know, everyone in our company came to the Christmas party, which I thought was just really cool. We all had a good time. We have a great team here, and just being able to do kind of team building stuff like that outside of work is nice, especially when we've all just been killing it here, busy as ever. With a new website and holiday season, it's been crazy. So that was really neat. This is actually going to be the last Q&A of 2014. Next week is going to be the day after Christmas. I'm definitely spending time with my family. You know, hopefully you are too, and if you are, hopefully you won't be thinking about me in any capacity, and you'll just go and do your own thing. Then I'll come back the following week. What is that, December 30, no, not December 31st. What is that, the week after that? It'll be January 2nd will be the Friday after that. So that's when I'll be coming back for Q&A. So I'm taking off next week intentionally, and then I'll be coming back the following week. As it is right now, it's December 19th today, and if you have any needs for anything for Christmas, get on it right now because, you know, it's coming down to the wire. You know, I kind of set an arbitrary date of like the 17th, maybe 18th for kind of guaranteeing things out for Christmas. You know, you never know with USPS how busy they're going to be. This is their busiest time of year. I think they're actually delivering stuff on Sundays this year, packages on Sundays because they're so busy, which is kind of neat that they're willing to do that. So yeah, it's definitely coming down to the wire. Go ahead and ship your order out. Because Christmas is on Thursday this year, it makes it really tough. Like any orders that come in over the weekend, it makes it so that we come back on a Monday and we're just like slammed from the weekend. So whatever we, you know, and if you're like, we're in Virginia, if you're in California, there's a good chance if we ship it out even on Monday, you might not get it in time for Christmas. So that's why I set a date as far back as I did in last week's Q&A for that. So, you know, if you're watching this on Friday and you haven't placed your order yet, do it now and send us a frantic email saying that we need to ship it out immediately because it's down to the wire. Then just kind of a heads up, forgive my cough there. Videos and stuff are going to be a little bit lighter going into Christmas, especially between Christmas and New Year's. We got a lot going on, got a lot of people taking time off. I'm covering things, we're hiring, it's crazy. I'm taking time off for my family. So we're just kind of lighten the load a little bit. Once we come back in January, we're going to be coming out full force. I've actually just hired a marketing manager. His name is Mike. He's actually featured in the 12-day, not featured, he's in the 12 days of Christmas video that we just put out. That's, I don't know if you'll recognize him there. We don't even have him on the website yet because he's, you know, just kind of just starting now into the holidays, but he'll be helping me out pretty soon. So you'll be seeing much more of Mike here pretty soon. Really excited about him coming on board. Very talented guy. Then the last thing is this 12 days video that we got out. If you haven't seen this yet, 12 Days of Goulet, go check it out. It's a ridiculously epic video that we put together. We've been working on this thing for like 6 weeks. It's crazy, and it came together so well. Like everybody in our company got involved. You know, Jenny, our videographer, she's a rock star, and this would not have happened without her. And Greg helped with the audio mixing. You know, he's on our fulfillment team, but he's got audio mixing skills. really helped to pull the music together. We recorded everything in-house, did all of our own costumes and acting and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of a musical thing of 12 days of fountain pen stuff, so it's really kind of fun. It's something we've been kind of conceived, even last year, but never were able to pull it together. And this year it was definitely hectic trying to do that with everything else we had going on, but it was a real kind of a nice way to pull the team together, have a lot of fun. So that was kind of neat for us, and it's been super well received so far, which I'm really thrilled about because, man, did we put a lot of work into that. So that was really cool to see it's kind of so well received in the pen community. So we'll definitely look to do some more stuff like that in the future. We'll probably try to time it a little better so it's not right in the middle of our holiday season, but we had a lot of fun doing it, and we'll probably do more stuff like that coming up. So let's get into the questions this week. I've got 17 of them scoped out, so I don't know if I'll get to all 17, but I will do my absolute best. Last week I got 23, so we'll see if I can kind of plow through them. I can answer a lot of different questions. So first one I've got is from Dane Miles on YouTube. Said, hey Brian, what pen carry/storage solutions do you recommend for students, someone who carries a backpack? Well, you don't have to be a student to carry a backpack. I am a professional, I guess. And I carry a backpack. I used to carry a laptop kind of messenger bag thing, but now I like a backpack. I like it especially because it's got these little water bottle things on the side. So I keep my water bottle over here, and I keep my coffee mug over here. So I get to carry my stuff around. I keep all kinds of notebooks and pens and stuff like that in here. I have a couple of different methods that I use personally. So in my thing here, I've got like some cough drops and all this kind of stuff. I always carry way too much stuff everywhere. I just like to be prepared. So what I end up doing is I end up having the pens that are not as big a deal to me, or the ones that are a little more durable, like Charcoal Safari. I'll just kind of stick that in there and slide it in. I got like a Jinhao in here, Those I don't worry about too much, just random Sharpies and stuff that I need. The ones that I care a little more about, my Custom 74, I always want this thing at the ready, but I want to protect it a little better, so I'll put it in a pen sleeve, just like this. This is an Aston pen slip. It's like 12 bucks, genuine leather, really nice. I've been using this one. My Custom 74 has been housed in this pen for years. So this slip has got to be, 4 years old, almost 4 years old at this point, and it's held up really well. It's definitely got some wear on it. It's nice and broken in, but does a great job of kind of protecting pen per pen. I got another one here with a Custom 823 with Jeroboam Stormy Gray in there. Oh, what a good combination this is. And then, for some of my other pens, I actually specifically bought this backpack with pen storage in mind, because I was thinking like, I want some stuff at the ready here. I need a slot for my laptop, and I also wanted another slot for like notebooks and my journals and stuff like that. I need to have my laptop power cable here sometimes, so I'll have that in here. I got a Radio Web notebook in there. And then I like this front compartment, because what I store in here is I have a 10 pen case. This is an Aston case 10 that I have with several different pens here that I'll just show you real quick and make you kind of wonder what I have in there. But some of my nicer pens I'll store in here, a little better protected. Not that these Pilot pens are not nice, but I've got like Ogiva and stuff like that in there. So that's what I'll have going on in here. So definitely like a case like that, or a case like that, that's like a $90 pen case. So I wouldn't expect that to be something kind of student grade, but the pen slips are definitely something that you could do. Or if you want to look, there's some other pen type solutions. I don't have a lot of different pen cases on my site, actually. Knock, Brad Dowdy started Knock. I'm a big fan of their stuff. I've shown some of the stuff in the previous Q&As, and they've got a good stuff. They currently are only selling direct. They're looking to expand in 2015. We've been talking with them for 6 months about retailing Knock. They're not ready yet at the production level to be wholesaling to us. So we haven't started doing it yet, but definitely as soon as they're ready, we're going to start carrying Knock. That would be a great solution for you. You can buy direct for them, just N-O-C-K, just Google that and you'll find it. If you wanted to wait a little bit, we'll have it at some point. We'll do videos on it and whatnot for sure. They're like kind of like ballistic nylon type with all different colors and stuff. Their stuff is a little more affordable than the genuine leather stuff. So really durable, will hold up well. That's going to be great for students. So those would be my recommendations. Andy P on Facebook. Hey, I always carry a throwaway pen. For the knucklehead who forgets a pen at a meeting. Sometimes I get persnickety and persistent knucklehead who notices the oh-so-nice pen sticking out of my pocket and can become insistent on using one of them. My guard is up, the adrenaline starts to flow, and I start getting into fight, not flight mode. It's particularly painful when the knucklehead is a superior. Do you have any fountain pen ninja tactics to employ? Very nice storytelling there, Andy. You know, honestly, I have to say that I have little to no experience in this area because of the environment that I work in here. I never worked in a real job before doing this. You know, I was always kind of an entrepreneur starting my own thing. I worked my way through school, you know, power washing, decks, sealing decks, painting, handyman kind of stuff. When I graduated, I did one internship, but that was before I was into fountain pens. And then I worked with my father power washing houses, and then I started this. So I don't really have experience being in that kind of corporate environment with fountain pens, other than being here. Now, I have the distinct advantage of anyone I hand my pen to around here, you know, they're going to take care of it because I'm the boss. You know, they don't want to ruin the boss's pen. Also, everybody here knows how to handle fountain pens, like really well. So I don't worry about handing my pen to anyone around here. So there's not as much concern. I let customer care and whatnot borrow my pens all the time. I want them to get to know all the different kinds of pens. I got a pretty extensive collection myself. So I'm like, oh, you want to try an extra fine Falcon? Here you go. You know, you want to try a whatever, Faber-Castell? Here, you try Waterman? Here, you know, there. Just so they can get some experience with it. But for your situation, okay, I have to kind of just daydream a little bit because I don't really know what the best tactic might be. Definitely, you know, keeping multiple pens so that you have one to hand off, that you don't mind them loaning out. It sounds like, though, if someone is gunning for one of your nice pens, you know, if that's the case and they're just being really insistent on it, you know, I don't want to promote lying, but if you want to like fib a little bit and just say like, look, this pen is really important to me, you know, it was a special gift or whatever, you know, like if there is some like legitimate reason other than just like it's really expensive and I don't trust you because I think you're not going to handle my pen well, some people could get kind of insulted about that. But if there's any kind of other like tangential reason that you think might work, and if they're really persistent, you could just be like, you know, I'm really sorry, like this is my personal pen, I don't feel comfortable loaning it out to anyone. I would think that they would just be okay with that at some point, unless they're really just a jerk. And if that's the case, you know, I don't really have any good advice for you. I don't know. Maybe if any of you watching this have had that kind of similar situation, you have like a good diversion tactic, you know, like, oh, hey, what? Hello? You know, grab your cell phone and like walk out. I don't know. I really don't know. So, you know, I'd love to know if you have any specific situations there that you've run into in the comments. That would be really great. But gosh, Andy, sorry, I just don't have like a one magical tactic that I think would always work in that situation. Chris W. on Facebook, do you plan on carrying more Kaweco pens in the future? Also, which pen would you prefer, the Kaweco Sport or the TWSBI Mini? Yeah, I don't really, you know, Kaweco, okay, so they're in Germany. They have a US distributor. They've gone through, I think, 3 different US distributors since they've been on my radar, since I've been in business. So the distributorship keeps changing. It kind of depends on the US distributor as which pens are readily available in the US. So as it is right now, we carry pretty much most, if not all, of what they do regularly stock in the US. And even then, a lot of the stuff is out of stock at times. So stocking Kaweco is really tough. It was tough before when we had a different distributor. It was even tougher back then because they only carried medium nibs. We had to special order anything else that was another size. This one is better now, but there's still stock issues. I don't really understand why, whether it's like a Kaweco Germany thing or the distributor in the US or what is going on. You know, there's a lot of like logistics and stuff behind the scenes, especially when you're dealing with importing, exporting, stuff like that. You get customs involved and all that. It can be kind of tricky to manage stock well, which is why you see that we're kind of out of random things at random times, kind of all the time on our site. It's not because we mismanage our inventory. I mean, we do our best, but a lot of times we're just back ordered on stuff. So we definitely run into that with Kaweco. But as far as like whole pen models that we don't carry, a lot of them are just ones that you see overseas or whatever, direct from Germany, that are just not brought into the US. So if we wanted to carry them, it would be a special order kind of situation, which takes months to come in. We have to buy in fairly sizable quantity of each nib size and all that, and it's just not worth it for us. You know, honestly, just the demand is not there to support the quantity we would need to buy and with the lead times that we'd need to have. So we're not looking to expand Kaweco anytime soon, honestly. Unless the US distributor does, and it would be easier for us to kind of stock them regularly, because it's not a good service to you, you know, for us to stock things irregularly and bring something in, have it sell out, not get restocked for 2 months. You know, that's just not really helping anybody out. You're at your second question, the Kaweco Sport or the TWSBI Mini. For me, the TWSBI Mini, hands down. Just, you know, it's a piston filler, it's easier to take apart and maintain. Generally a little more reliable, it's heavier, you know, it's a little bit larger. I like that pen a lot better than the Kawecos. I'll talk about Kaweco a little more further down the line here if I actually get to that question. You know, the Kaweco Sport, it's cool because you can convert it to an eyedropper, it's kind of handy, it's got some quirks with it, and just in general, for me, the pen's too thin. I just don't like it. That's just a personal preference thing. A lot of people love it, and that's great. For me, though, I got big hands, and it's just not doing it for me. At La Lin on Twitter, do you have a cunning system for remembering what ink is in what pen? I always think I'll remember. Boy, do I know that to be the truth. I'm in the same situation. I will have to talk conceptually because I am not naturally the most organized person. Half the time I ink up my pen, you know, I have a lot of different pens that I use. I rotate and I go back through and I'm like, shoot, what color was this? And if it's like something where I'm writing a letter or whatever where I want to reference the color, I will just not use that pen. I'll use a different one where that I know which ink is in that pen. But sometimes when I'm changing it out, I'm like, oh, gosh, you know, I kind of forgot. And it's like, well, it's time to clean out the pen now. I forgot what it is. That's just kind of a disorganized thing, just naturally flaw that I have in my own process. But I have tried a couple different things that have worked okay to varying degrees when I'm not like super busy and forget to even write stuff down. You know, keeping an index card or a business card or something like that, if you have a pen case, you know, particularly if you have a case where, I don't have one on me, but if you have a case, wait, maybe I do. If you have a pen case that actually has like a business card slot in it or something like that, that's super handy. I'm trying to see if I actually have one, you know, like the Aston, you know, the smaller one. Why am I even showing this? Because I don't have this one, but the 6 pen case, it's got a little business card slot there, so you could actually keep a business card or an index card or something right in there. But even if you don't, you know, just keep an index card right in here. And then whenever you ink up the pen, just write with that pen, say nibs, you know, nib color, whatever, and you have a handy reference right there. And then when you go to refill it, you just scratch it out and do a whole new thing. Man, my phone is really hot. What is going on with this thing? Anyway, I'm gonna put that aside. Yeah, so that would be my suggestion there. Also, if you have like a phone or something like that that you always keep handy, you know, just opening up your notes or reminders or something like that and just kind of typing it in. That's another way to do it. Not as, you know, personally not as handy, I don't think, as having it like right in the pen case if you do carry a pen case. Otherwise, you know, depending on the pen, you know, what I've done in the past is I've actually like written down on a small piece of paper, actually taped it to the pen, or like put it inside the pen when I go to fill it or something. That really depends on which pen you're using, whether or not it's something that you can handle doing that. But that's another little option. Another thing you can do is just randomly guess. That's a terrible tactic, but I end up doing that sometimes. Not when it's something important like I'm doing an ink review and I need to know which ink is in there. No, but if I'm just writing a to-do list or something like that and the color doesn't particularly matter, you know, I won't sweat it too much. Or just, you know, flat out forgetting. That's another tactic that I do. And then you just have to clean out the pen and remember what you're doing. That happens more often than I really care to admit, but I'm just being real with you. That's what I end up doing sometimes. Carmen C on Facebook, I like the way I can find inks that are water or freeze resistant on the website, but I'm also interested in inks with sheen and inks that shade really well. Fortunately, I don't see any tick boxes on the side of the website for those properties. Is there any chance you'll add those next year? The sheen will be a little bit tougher because that is definitely not something that most companies would advertise at all. Water and freeze resistant, those are even tough sometimes. Now, one thing that we have done is beef up our ink reviews on our site so that when you're reviewing an ink, you can mark some of the properties. I don't think we have sheen in there though. We've got shading and flow and water resistance and stuff like that, but in dry time, but we do not have sheen. However, sheen is usually pretty easy because people like to show it off, especially on Instagram and, you know, places like that. And there's not a ton of inks that sheen. I could tell you off the top of my head right now, most of them that do, like Jeroboam Stormy Gray, Diamond Majestic Blue, Private Reserve Electric DC Blue, Diamond Sherwood Green even has a little bit of reddish sheen to it, Jeroboam Rouge Hematite, those are just some of Mueller's Ottoman Azure, those are some other ones. Diamond Ancient Copper. Sorry, I'm just rattling off a bunch of random colors and you're like, what color did you just say? Sorry about that. But, those are just some of the, and that's like most of them right there that I just named. So there's maybe like a dozen or so that have any kind of a significant sheen that I can think of out of the 500 plus inks that I have. So it's just not that many of them, honestly. And even then, it's going to vary depending on the nib that you use and the paper that you use. So that's kind of tough, just because it's like, I don't want to advertise that something sheens when it's kind of borderline and you have to use just the right paper and ink combination to really have it sheen, and then have a bunch of people buy it and get really upset. So I'm much more hesitant to advertise any kind of a sheen. Now you're talking about water resistance and stuff. That is different. That I have on the website. You can see that if you go to the facets that we have, the search filters on the right side, on the left side of the page. You go all the way down to the bottom. Water resistance is down there. But some of the other properties, let's see, what else did you say? Sheen, ink, shade really well. So shading, yes. If you go to individual reviews, you can see, or individual ink pages, you can see it kind of rolls up. If somebody has done a more recent ink review since we've changed over our new website, then you'll see that you can rate the shading, and it actually gathers up all the reviews that people have done and gives a summary of it. So it averages out everybody's, because it's an opinion-based thing, depending on a lot of different factors. But I figure enough people over time that have used it will get shading and whatnot and can rate all those different properties. Eventually, you can kind of get an assumption based on enough people's reviews of kind of what the properties of that ink are. Now, we don't have that built into the search filters yet. So that is something that isn't automatic that we would set up. It would be a manual thing. So I would want to make sure that we have plenty of those reviews, the new reviews on our new site, before we go actually kind of officially classifying the shading properties of an ink, and saying what it is. As it is right now, it just rolls up and says like, review summary kind of thing. So you're realizing like, okay, this is, shading is really high, but this is based on the people's reviews. This isn't like a manufacturer thing or anything official from a retailer. This is, what people are saying is their opinion. For us to actually put it into a search filter, that's kind of making it a little more official. So I would want to make sure that we really kind of know for sure that that's what's going on. So it's going to take time before we would build anything like that. I would say 3 to 6 months at least, depending on the review volume that we get in, before I would feel comfortable making any kind of a statement like that on any properties that are kind of like that. Heath B on Facebook, being new to the fountain pen world, I like to read as much as I can. What are some of your favorite blogs to read? And I'm now just realizing I meant to research this a lot more and get you some names, and I forgot. So I'm gonna have to go off the top of my head. I'll be completely honest to say, I am not reading a lot of blogs these days. I barely have enough time to write my own. And I just do not have the time to spend. I'm currently in the process of hiring a community coordinator here. So that is someone who their position would be to go out and search and read a whole bunch of other blogs. I know some of the ones that I used to look at like several years ago, but honestly, I'm just not like consuming as much content as I used to. I spend most of my time these days, managing my company, managing my team, spending time in the products myself. And then, Fountain Pen Geeks obviously would be one that's really big. Drawing with a Squirrel, Gentian, has a phenomenal, it's not so much for reading in terms of like, about the kind of products that I'm carrying, but just her artwork is fantastic. There's a lot of really good ones out there like that, and just crap. Like I really wish I had sat down and written all these down now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and research this a little bit, and I'm gonna put it in the written blog post. Some of the ones with hyperlinks of some of the blogs that I really like. Just another couple off the top of my head, would be like Hudson Valley Sketches. Jamie Grossman has done a lot of really good stuff with like mixed media and watercolor stuff. I guess a lot of the ones I've kind of been following have been art stuff, because those are the ones that tend to get shared really well. These days I will say, like, I've noticed a big change since I started out 5 years ago blogging myself, between written blogs and the way that kind of social media blogging in general has moved. Definitely more video stuff now than there's ever been. SBRE Brown, Stephen Brown on YouTube. obviously kind of a big video sensation, has done a lot of great stuff. Him and Aziza, love your stuff. And just there's been much less of an emphasis on written blogs now than there was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, you had forums and you had blogs, and like no one was really doing much with video, and those were kind of like your end-all be-all. But now it's like you got Instagram, you got Facebook, you got, you still have blogs, but a lot more people are doing videos than they used to. And that's kind of like a lot of how stuff is getting shared now. It's through more of these social channels. Even with my own blog traffic and blog, comments and stuff like that, it's really stagnated over the last couple of years. YouTube has been a steady climb, and Instagram and all these other channels have been steadily increasing quite a bit. The blog has been kind of flat for me, even though I've been putting out steady content. I've got over almost 1,100 blog posts at this point. But still, it's pretty, it's pretty stagnant, honestly. I think it's just because of the way that social media is kind of changing things. Different audiences on different platforms and stuff like that. It's just really interesting. So there's probably something like much bigger, much deeper I could get into about like the way that people are sharing fountain pen stuff now. But I would say like, reading blogs really isn't as much an emphasis now as it was even, 5 years ago. So, but still, I'll go through and I'll commit myself to this, which I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to anyway. I'm going to get you a list of at least some of the blogs that I am aware of that are good, and it's not going to be an exhaustive list. So if I don't put you on the list, don't be offended. It's honestly just because I have like 4 seconds to actually put this list together. So forgive me. I'll put together a list of just some of the highlights, and you can look through their blog rolls and kind of search around and see who else is out there. So I'm going to do that, but I just don't have much more to share in this moment here. So I'll go to the next question. Mikey M on Facebook, where did you get that drawing of the military doc treating his guy in the field? Being a former Marine, I'm drawn to that pic every time I see it. Okay, so that is something that's really kind of personal to me. I'll show it to you kind of up close here because you've seen it a couple of times. I got a letter that fell down over here. They fall off the wall all the time. But anyway, so this drawing is a really kind of a cool drawing by a comic book artist named Sed Nocon over in LA. And he had contacted me several years ago about Noodler's Ink. He loves the Noodler's Ahab. He did this whole thing with a Noodler's Ahab. And he likes Noodler's Ink. He really kind of likes what the company stands for. And he had remembered, how did this conversation, because this was a number of years ago, actually. If you look back at my videos, I've had this on my desk for a couple of years. We came out with an exclusive ink called Noodler's Purple Heart, which, it's for George Washington, the badge of military merit, which became the Purple Heart Award. My grandfather was at Pearl Harbor when it got bombed. And so he was a World War II veteran, and I think I was, maybe telling that story around Purple Heart. I don't remember the exact context, but it really just struck a chord with Sed. And Sed, he did like X-Men comics back in the 90s and stuff like DC and Marvel and whatnot. He's like legit artist. Has done some amazing work. In fact, I have this other, I've got actually something else from him over here that you can't see quite as well. This is also something he did, just a kind of a sketch of some stuff, but he's like pretty talented, you know what I mean? This is a print right here, but this one is original, the Purple Heart. So he was inspired by the Purple Heart ink, Nathan's pens, the Ahab and all that. So he drew this. This is with Noodler's Purple Heart. And, his grandfather served in World War II as well. So we had that kind of connection over the ink, over our grandfathers serving in the service. He ended up drawing this. So really, really kind of neat story there. Just like, connecting with somebody really talented like that, but in a way through fountain pens, it just kind of transcends just like, oh yeah, here's this product. I'm realizing this is not standing up very easily back here. So it's like, here's this product that we have that's like, oh, it's just an ink color or whatever, but like it really means so much more. And that's really kind of cool. So it's really significant to me, which is why I have it on my desk. I'm actually surprised I don't get asked more about it, but now I've officially kind of covered the whole shebang there. So thank you, Mikey, for your service. I really appreciate that. I never actually served, but actually it's kind of fitting. I wasn't even planning on this, but I was in the Corps of Cadets at Virginia Tech for 2.5 years. Almost became an Army officer, almost. I was in the Heidi Tidies, which is the regimental marching band at Virginia Tech. Did that for 2.5 years. Marched tenor sax and the sousaphone, actually. And I played bari sax in the jazz band, the military jazz band, the Southern Colonels at Virginia Tech. So very kind of a musical background, as you could tell a little bit from the 12 Days video, if you've seen that. I played the bass guitar, the clarinet, and I sang in that video. We had a lot of musical talent around here, which is part of what inspired that 12 Days video. But anyway, so I have a lot of friends all over the world in the service, and I just appreciate what you've done, Mikey. Dionne C on Facebook said, I was wondering how you can clean out a Pilot Con 70 converter. It seems to be hard to get the ink out of that little tube that's in the converter. It's kind of a pain. Yes, it is a pain. I agree with you. I meant to grab a clean Custom 74 converter and I totally forgot. So I'm just going to pull out my Custom 74 with the Con 70 in it to at least kind of point to what's going on. So this pen and a couple of the other larger ones, the Justice 95, the Custom 912, they come with this Con 70 converter, the Metal Falcon. They're larger pens. You need a larger bodied pen to fit this larger converter. And the way that this thing works, it's a push button fill, and it has this little, I've got a little ink in here, but you can still kind of see, it's got this little rubber kind of seal on it with a metal rod that connects to the back to the push button. And what happens is when you push this thing down, it's a push button, but it's kind of like a vacuum fill a little bit. So when you push this thing down, the rubber seal blocks, and as you're pushing down, the seal that's connected to this button creates a pressure, a higher pressure inside this thing. And then when you let it go, much like you would with a vacuum seal, when you let it go and spring it back up, the higher pressure forces the metal rod that's in here to jump up, break that seal, and it causes a negative pressure, which then creates ink to come up into the pen. So it's pretty weird how that works. Physically, I don't know if I explained that right. I'm not a scientist, but that's how it works. So you just push the button a few times, it creates a lot of pressure, and it just goes and it fills up. It's kind of crazy. I have a video on how to fill with the Con 70, and it's kind of funny, and I say BAM a lot whenever I do it, kind of like Emerald Lagasse, but that's how it works. So what ends up happening, though, is, let me see if I can do this without creating a giant mess. So this metal shroud is, I think it's glued on at first, so you have to kind of break that glue seal, which you may or may not want to do. It's totally up to you. But if you want to actually take this whole thing apart, you kind of can. So this metal shroud comes off, and you can see there's a metal rod that goes up in here, and then there's this little part up here with a spring and all that. And that's kind of how it works. You can pull this whole rod out, which, let me see if I can do that without making a mess. Okay, so this white part here, that's the seal. Oh, crap. Yep. Figured that would happen. Okay, well, I just leaked ink everywhere. Oh my gosh. I should have known that was going to happen. I should know better than that. Oh well. That's really funny. This is a moment here in the Q&A. All right, well, thank goodness it wasn't full. But anyway, oh shoot, there's ink everywhere. Oh my gosh. Okay, give me a second to kind of clean up after myself. Let me put a little water here. You know, this is a little cleanup time here with Brian Goulet. Yeah, you'd think that I would know how to handle a pen after 5 years, but maybe this could be just like a good demonstration to you that even if you have a lot of experience with pens, you still do stupid stuff sometimes. So essentially what just happened right there, in case you're confused. So I had some ink inside here, and the seal that was up here is what was keeping the pressure balanced inside the pen. And as soon as I released that seal, it essentially just became like an open straw. Like, you know, if you take a straw and you put your thumb over it and you lift it up and the water stays in there, or your drink or whatever, and then you let it go and it all comes out. That's essentially what I just did, was like let my thumb off the straw. And I should have known that ink was going to come pouring out of the pen, but I just really didn't think about that. Okay, well, now I've got an empty converter and I can show you more what's going on. So here's the converter. So if you take this thing apart, you can see that there is a rod that's connected in here to the seal. So when you actually, I mean, you can take it apart like this to clean it out. Honestly though, I don't do that because over time, you know, it's just you're gonna wear down all these kind of fine plastic parts and whatnot, and you're gonna need to replace the converter, and the converter is like 11 bucks or whatever. It's not cheap, you know, because it's kind of a complicated little device. So what I end up doing when I clean this converter is I just, you know, kind of, you know, have running water and I will fill it, and then I will just kind of put my finger over it and just shake the dickens out of it, and then pour it out. Shake the dickens, pour it out. Shake the dickens, pour it out. Sounds really weird, shake the dickens, but that's what I do. And, you know, because I've already taken this one a bunch, I guess, you know, I've had this for a couple of years and I've been doing it, so I guess it's not that fragile because I've been doing it for a couple of years. But anyway, so if you do actually want to take it apart like this, then what you can do is, you really can't take it much more apart than this safely. So what I end up doing is having running water, and then I take the metal rod here, which you can kind of pull out like this, and I end up just kind of moving it in and out like that as water is flowing in it, and it will kind of flush out more of what's going on the top. But as you can see, just in what I'm showing you here, as convenient as that is, it's still a pain. You're still going to get ink everywhere, and it's going to be a mess. So for me, what I end up doing with a pen that uses the Con 70, it's a higher ink capacity pen anyway, converter pen, whatever. Oh, and I just shot ink everywhere. I'm really not having a good ink day here. So what I end up doing is just keeping kind of the same ink in this pen, or a very, very similar color ink, and I'll clean it out as best I can and just not sweat it too much if the water's not 100% clear. You know, I might switch between Noodler's 54th and Noodler's Liberty's Elysium or something like that. Now I need to ink up my pen again. And I would know what I had in here if I'd written it down. That's okay, I know what's in there. So yeah, that's kind of my situation. Definitely spent more time on that question than I thought I would. But, you know, I didn't let the ink dry on the desk, wiped it up with some water, so that was pretty good. And I'm going to see if I can make it in my trash can. Nope. Missed. Okay. Anywho, next question. Leonore P. on Facebook. I purchased some Eternal Brown ink from Noodler several years ago. I love it because once it dries, it's virtually eternal, no smearing or running from water sprinkles. Does Noodler's or any other company make an Eternal type ink anymore in any color? Yes, so I mentioned the search filters in an earlier question here in this Q&A. That definitely helps. We don't have an Eternal search filter anymore. We used to have search filters for things like Eternal and Bulletproof and stuff like that. However, those are Noodler's only terms, so we really debated about putting them back on the new site, and we opted not to, and now we're kind of getting a little bit of flack about that, how it's harder to search for those specific properties. So we're debating about putting it back. You know, it's not as easy to just kind of add a feature back in like that, because it involves the way we have each product attributed and stuff like that, attributed, whatever. So it's complicated. We have to really think about how we want to go about doing that. So yeah, I admit it kind of stinks that we took that away, and it makes it a little more complicated than it used to be, and I'm sorry about that. So if you look on our site, you scroll down on the search filters, if you go into the like bottled ink page, and you scroll down all the way on the left, you'll see a water resistant. That's a really good indicator, because most inks that are water resistant are pretty, you know, eternal, if you will. The eternal is a Noodler specific term that is referenced as, yes, it's water resistant, but it's also fade resistant, so it's meant to be kind of archival. Honestly, if you take most any fountain pen ink and you put it in a closed journal on acid-free pH neutral paper, it's going to outlast you and me combined, probably. So it's as much about the paper as anything. The eternal properties, though, that really classify something as eternal instead of just water resistant has to do with the fade resistant properties. Now, we did put together a Noodler's spreadsheet that has all the different properties and stuff. Do we even have that on our new site now? I don't know. There's a lot of little like things like that we're still kind of working on. I'm just looking right now to see if we even have it on the Noodler's page. I don't believe that we do, and I am sorry about that. Yeah, I need to get it up somewhere. But anyway, so that would help. but we're thinking about that right now, how to get that. But are there any other companies that make Eternal? So the Diatramentis document inks, Super 5 inks are all that way. Any Noodler's Eternal ink is that way, or pretty much any Noodler's bulletproof ink as well is that way. So you've got some options for sure there. But if really what you're going for is the water resistance, you can look up inks that are classified as water resistant, and that will tell you something. And plus, with the new reviews on our site, you can also see how it's rated in terms of its actual water resistance there. Heath R on Facebook said, I know it's not ideal, but would an extra fine nib work on a newspaper crossword puzzle? Yeah, sure. The ink choice that you make is going to make a difference in terms of how well it works. I would suggest something like Noodler's X Feather or Heart of Darkness or something like that that's really good at resisting feathering and bleed through. It's not going to be an amazing experience, but it should definitely get the job done, especially if you're going with something like a Platinum Preppy Extra Fine or something that like truly is an extra fine. Faber-Castell's got a really good extra fine. What else? Pilot has a couple of good extra fines, things like that. That's what I would recommend. Bob H on Facebook, is there a reason why you don't sell Waterman pens? Just curious. Excellent website, excellent company, excellent products, excellent people. Thank you. Well, Bob, I'm not sure if you're saying all those excellent things about Waterman or about my company. I'm going to assume that you're talking about me. So thank you. But hey, whether it's me or Waterman, that's great. Thank you for sharing some love. So yes, as far as Waterman goes, I've got a Careen that I'm carrying around that I enjoy very much. It doesn't post as well as I'd like. That's probably like the one thing that is keeping me from really wanting to go gung-ho on this pen. It's not a cheap pen, and it does not post super great. I do like the way that it writes a lot. I love the hooded nib. It's like, it doesn't post naturally. I have to really force it on there, and then it'll stay. But, that's the one thing I'm not super crazy about, honestly. And then, I do like this pen a lot. I love the way it writes. I just really love everything about it except for the posting thing. So I personally would love to get more into it. I haven't had a lot of people asking though, just really haven't, even over the last 5 years, haven't had a lot of demand. Waterman does not have a lot of kind of intro level pens, which kind of makes it hard to just ease into it. To just dive right in on multi-$100 pens. That's tough without knowing that there's a demand for it, So I haven't wanted to just go gung-ho on it. So I'm honestly, Bob, I'm waiting for people like you to come out and be like, why don't you carry Waterman? I want this, I want that, let me order it now. Give me. And then if I'm not getting bugged like that, I'm going to take my time to just make sure that I know the pens inside and out and all that. It's a much faster, much easier decision for me to want to carry something if people are banging down my virtual doors in order to get it. Haven't had that happening with Waterman. I think it's available at a lot of different places. They sell it at, not every pen, but they sell a lot of them in office supply stores and stuff like that. There's just not as much of a kind of boutique interest in Waterman because it's and I find that not just Waterman, but Parker and just all these other kind of older, much more known. Cross is another one that I get asked about from time to time, but not nearly as much. I'm just realizing I got ink on my computer. Not nearly as much just because it is available in so many more places, and I'm a niche, boutique kind of online retailer, and if I got it on my trackpad too, jeez. Okay, that cleans up well. Glad that wasn't a permanent ink. Anyway, yeah, I'm just waiting for more people to ask me for it. It's kind of where I stand. All right, totally lost my place. Where was I, Bob? Okay, there we go, Bob. John B. on Facebook. Would you ever considered a new or second design for the Edison Goulet exclusive pen? I love the seasonal colors, but I just can't fall in love with the shape of the Nouveau Premier. Well, sorry about that, John. We did actually come out with a second exclusive design called the Encore that came out several years ago, and we actually discontinued it because of poor sales. And it just, it was a little more expensive pen. It had a little more embellishments on it. And then, it did okay. It was a smaller pen. The number 5 size nibs were not as popular as the larger number 6 size like we have on most of the other Edisons. And it just wasn't as popular as I would have hoped. And, you know, it was like kind of like my baby, and it was an exclusive. I didn't really want to give it up, but it really was not selling well. So we discontinued it and haven't really had anybody ask us about it since. So it tells me that we made the right move. So that said, you know, the fact that we've had one really successful long-running design, and then we've had one that was, I'm not going to say it was a flop, but it certainly was not what we were hoping it would be. You know, I would say that to do another exclusive is going to be a little bit tougher this time because we know what we're in for. You know, I've talked to Brian Gray about it. We've been in talks before, sure, about doing another exclusive. And it's a harder decision to make at this point because it takes a lot of time for him to do a new pen design, to actually take something and make it, you know, from scratch in all of his he's got, you know, CNC equipment and stuff like that. It takes like 40 or 50 hours for him to program one pen model. And then there's all the time of prototyping and scoping it out. And then, like, if it actually is even good, you know, that's just the time it takes to build the program. So it's a lot of time involved, and 40, 50 hours of his time. Just think of how many Edison pens he could be making during that time. So that's, you know, that's real time that he's spending that we would need to essentially pay for with a new pen model. So I'm just looking at the hurdle, the barrier of designing a new pen model. It's like, if he already has something that's designed and we just wanted to make it an exclusive, like another model that he has, and just offer it in some exclusive colors, that would be an easier transition to do than it would be to come up with a whole new pen design. The whole new pen design thing is pretty much like, you know, not on the table at this point in time, just because he doesn't have the time to even be able to program that out. Nor do I have anything that I feel like super strongly about that's different enough from all the other Edison pens that I would want him to design. For me, it's kind of like, if I was going to offer an exclusive kind of thing, I would rather, for everyone's sake, keeping costs down, making it easy, I would rather take another pen model that's fairly popular, bring it into an exclusive kind of production setting, you know, something maybe he has in his custom line, bring it into exclusive setting, choose some colors, and just work with it that way. Technically, it wouldn't be an exclusive to us in terms of that, but it would be an exclusive production Edison pen. You know, his custom pens start at $250 and go on up. Having a production pen in the 150 range or something. But then it's like, if he has a custom pen that you could also buy as an exclusive, you know, then it's like, at the production price, what do you do? But the, you know, so it's kind of difficult, and there's a lot of logistics and stuff like that to work out. So I'll say it's a possibility, but it gets tough. It gets tough there to kind of justify doing that at this point in time. Stephen S. on Facebook said, I've got a good one. I recently got a bottle of the 1670 Stormy Gray. I've been fiddling around trying to find the pen that works best with it. What would you recommend that meets these requirements? Can disassemble a nib and feed to clean out the gold gunk out. A wet writer stub / italic nib, relatively inexpensive in case the first requirement ends up being more trouble than it's worth. I'm leaning towards an Ahab with a Goulet 1.1 millimeter in it. I've tried with the normal flex nib, and it kind of looks like a glitter pen when flexed, hence the desire for an italic. If you have any other suggestions, I'd love to hear them. I totally know what you're talking about. You know, using that in an Ahab flex pen, definitely you get like such a heavy sheen or such a heavy like sparkle that it ends up almost looking like a glitter pen, which is, you know, some people that's what they want because it's kind of like the only ink that really does that. Even the Rouge Hematite will do that to a degree, but this Stormy Gray is like, it's got more of a sheen than anything I've ever seen before. Pretty crazy, which is why I think everybody's going so gaga over it. Yeah, if you throw a 1.1 nib on there, I think it's going to tame it a little bit. It's not going to be as wet. It's not going to pull up quite as much as it would with the flex nib on it. It's still going to have a pretty heavy sheen, but I think the paper choice too is going to make a big difference. I don't know if people realize how much the paper choice makes a difference in terms of the sheen that you see really on any of those sheening inks, especially on this Stormy Gray though. You're asking for other suggestions, you know, maybe if you're talking for the italic thing, you know, you want something with a removable nib and feed. So a Jinhao, you know, comes with a medium nib, but you can swap a Goulet nib on that too. So you could technically disassemble that nib and feed. You could do that with a Twisby nib. They have, you know, nibs with italics on there, but they're friction fit. You can pull them in and out. You know, be careful, but you can do it. Maybe, well, I put a Platinum Cool on this list, but I'm now realizing you're asking for italics, so that wouldn't fit on there, but you can disassemble that thing completely too. It's different though. You can't just pull the nib and feed out of there. You actually take out the grip, and then you got to like unscrew the back of the grip of the pen, and everything pulls out through the other way. I have a video on that. Yeah, those would be some of my suggestions. But the Platinum Cool is not an italic, so you know. But it's definitely not as wet a writer as the Ahab, so maybe it'd be something. It's not quite as cheap as the Ahab, but it's still down there. All of these are relatively affordable. TWSBI would be the most expensive of this whole bunch, but you know, it's right in that range there for you. Mark Z on Facebook, would the Preppy Extra Fine work well with the ink Stormy Gray, or would the Gold Flex likely clog such a fine nib? Okay, so definitely there's a lot of talk of Stormy Gray. I've actually got another question in here about Stormy Gray coming up, which I will probably actually get to. Interesting. So yeah, so I honestly haven't heard that many reports of Stormy Gray clogging or being a problem. You know, it's got that glittery stuff in there. It's pretty fine though, and the flow issues have not been that great for most of the reports. So it's not as big a concern, and it cleans out pretty easily. So I don't think you need to completely freak out unless you have, you know, a pen that you know is troublesome, or it's a particularly expensive or rare or precious pen to you. Maybe just avoid, you know, all kind of unconventional inks like this one, just in general. You know, for pens like a Preppy Extra Fine, you know, I think it's going to work okay for you. The nib and the feed, the nib like slit in the feed and like all the back end guts of the pen are going to be the same on that as it would be on any other Preppy. In most any other fountain pen, honestly. The Extra Fine, the only difference between that particular pen is going to be the tip, the amount of tipping and the way that it's ground at the tip. So it's not going to affect how it flows necessarily through the feed. It's more going to affect how fat the line is, you know, on the page. That's about the only thing. So it could affect the flow because, you know, the less surface area there is on that nib, the less kind of capillary action is going to happen. So it's not going to flow quite as well, you know, as it would with, say, a broad nib. Not that the Preppy is available on a broad, that's a bad example. The medium nib on the Preppy. It's going to flow better just because there's more surface area on that nib, so there's more area for that ink to be flowing down, capillary action, all that. Extra Fine, there's less of that, but it's not because it's clogging up in the feed necessarily. So just clean it out regularly like you maintain most of your pens and you're going to be okay. Especially on the Preppy, because that cap seals really well, so you're not going to have as much of a problem with it drying out and stuff as you might with a pen that doesn't seal as well. So I would say that you can definitely use it, but the caveat here is with an Extra Fine nib, it's just not going to show off the Gold Flex quite as much as it would on a broader nib because you're not putting that much ink down on the page. You might still be able to see it. I've never actually used that specific combination, but just in general, you're not going to see it as much as you would with a broader nib. So you may be fine to use it, but find that it's just not as flattering as you would like. I'm going to take a 10-second water break here, so just sit back and contemplate about the questions that I've answered so far. Okay, got a couple questions left, 3 more, we'll see if I can get to them all. Tristan N on Facebook said, do you have pens or inks or paper that you love to hate? Like a pen that's ugly as heck, but has a super sweet nib, or ink that almost needs a steel brush to get cleaned out of a pen, but has the best sheen, or paper that's almost glass, but with a smell bad enough to clean out the room. So yes, love to hate, you know, definitely there are some products out there that I'm not particularly fond of. You know, I don't know about love to hate. That's kind of a strong thing. I don't particularly love hating anything, but probably one of the ones at the top of my list would have to be just Noodler's pens in general. That cellulose, cellulose derivative that they use for the pens, the conventional like Nib Creeper, Ahab, and the Conrad. Anybody who has one of these pens knows what I'm talking about. They have a smell about them. And when you have, you know, a pen case that has 20 of them in there, and I have way more than that, honestly, you leave that thing put away for a while and you open it up and it's like, woo, okay. So like, I love those pens. I love the way they look. I love how user-friendly they are. Okay, user-serviceable, I should say. they take a little bit of tinkering. I love being able to tinker with them and being able to, I love the way they write. But the smell, oh boy, you know, it gets on your hands. It's just like, you know, I'll be the first to admit, like, they do not smell great for most people. You know, to me, I'm very accustomed to the smell, so it doesn't bother me nearly as much as it used to. But still, it's really strong when you have them. I like have a kind of like a plastic tub that I keep a bunch of them in. It's got like maybe 30 pens in them. And when I crack that thing open after it's been sealed up for a while, it kind of knocks me out a little bit. So it's that definitely falls in that category. Certain inks, I love some of their properties, but just are, you know, troublesome or just harder to use, harder maintenance. You know, some of the ones off the top, I didn't even write these down on my list. I'm just off the top of my head. You know, Noodler's Bay State Blue obviously would be up there. You know, it's really not that big of a deal to clean it out. You cut it with bleach. You know, use a bleach dilution of 10% bleach to water, and it cuts right through. It's not that big a deal. But even still, it kind of sticks to things. You know, it's a very kind of sticky ink. Not sticky in terms of like tacky, but sticky in terms of like if it gets on the inside of a pen, a demonstrator pen, for example, it is not going to flush out just with water. You got to cut it with bleach. So you got to kind of like dedicate a pen to it. So I love it and I hate it for that reason. It's the most vibrant blue though. It's just amazing. Another good one of my favorites, Diamine Majestic Blue. It's a deep blue with a rich red sheen on it. But the dry time on that thing is insane. It takes like years for that thing to dry practically. And it's, even when it's dry, it smears. It's how it is. It's really saturated and you just have to deal with it. You know, so that would be one of them for sure. I'm not a big fan of fast dry inks. I really like them for certain things, you know, but I just, you know, I hate how much they feather. The Bernanke inks, the PR Fast Dries, some of the Noodler's Eternals, even the Diatramentus Documents and the Super 5 inks, they all dry pretty fast, but that's because they dry quickly by absorbing into the paper and kind of feathering out, spreading out. I'm not a fan of the way that, you know, some of the permanent inks like the Diatramentus, the Super 5, a lot of the Noodler's permanent inks, not all of them, but a lot of them, the way they kind of spread and just kind of flatten out. It's a chemical like property. You can't do anything about it. It's the way that it is. Those permanent qualities, that's what it does to that ink, is it flattens it out and like eliminates all shading altogether. Some people like that. I don't. So I love the water resistant properties, but I hate that it kills the shading. It's just kind of like I have to deal with that because that's physics, but that's just one thing. Let's see here. There's some pens like the Lamy CP1. Like I love the pen for what it is, but I hate how thin it is. It's just, it bothers me. You know, I got big hands and stuff like that, and so that would be one thing. You know, just the triangle grip on most of the Lamy pens. You know, it's neat, and I love my All-Stars and Safaris, but I just hate the triangle grip. I'm just one of those people that I hate it because it's just, it makes it too thin for me, and my fingers all touch together, and it's just weird. You know, but I still love the pens. I use them all the time. But, you know, just things like that, little weird aspects of it. Not a big fan of slick metal grips either. I love pens like the Lamy Studio and stuff like that, Faber-Castell Lume, you know, but the slick metal grip, you know, the Lume actually doesn't have as slick a metal grip, but there's definitely other pens like the Schaefer 100 and stuff like that where it's got that slick metal grip. Love the pen, grip I'm not as big a fan of. And then just little pens like the Kawecos and the Monteverde Paquito, stuff like that. I like the pen because it's small for what it is, but I can't write with that thing for a long time. So it's like, I love it. I love that it's small, but I hate that it's small at the same time. I'm conflicted within myself. So I don't know if that answers your question at all, but those are just some of the random things just kind of off the top of my head. All right, I got 2 questions left. See if I can get to both of them. MKB on Facebook. Reposting from a comment under the last Q&A. Number 1, I have a Super 5 given me by a friend who got hers at the Urban Sketchers International Symposium. That is where Super 5 debuted earlier this summer in 2014. Is the pen fussy about ink? The converter is really hard to remove, but finally got it off and cleaned. Refilled with platinum carbon black, my favorite. I now can't get it to flow, just a little bit of ink scratches. Okay, there could be a lot of different things going on here. First thing I'm going to say is, you know, you said the converter is hard to get out. I will say Supervive has their own converter that I don't like as much as the regular standard international converter. So the converter, well, it doesn't come with a converter for one thing. Supervive offers their own converter, but it's it's not as good, in my opinion, it's not as good a quality as the regular standard international. It's all plastic. There's no metal parts or anything to it. So I don't like it as much, which is why we don't offer the official Super 5 converter on gouletpens.com. We offer an add-on for this standard international converter that I like much better. Just my own preference. If I didn't know anything about pens, I would just offer the Super 5 one and you would have to deal with it. But I like this one better, so that's what I'm offering. But anyway, so I think that's what you're dealing with. If you got it at the symposium, I'm imagining it's coming with that other converter, so I can't even really speak to that. I've seen it for myself when I got some samples from Super 5. I got those converters, wasn't as crazy about them, but I know what you're talking about. You know, it's all plastic, it kind of sticks in there, and it might have just been the first thing. You know, it's kind of a first-time deal, so I don't know if it's I don't know. It's really not even something I analyzed that much. But you're talking about the flow, the fussiness and stuff like that. I will say it is a fine stub. You know, it's a 0.5, and they also have a 0.7 that I haven't seen yet. 0.5 stub. Now, an actual 0.5 millimeter is technically like around a medium, or a little bit finer than a medium. So is it truly 0.5? Well, I don't know about that. But they call it the 0.5. It's definitely like way thinner than a 1.1 or whatever. But it's the finest stub that I've ever used, so it's awesome in that way. However, it's a little deceiving because it's a pretty fine nib, so it almost looks like a conventional nib in a way, and kind of writes with a point that's almost that fine. However, it is a little bit stub-like, and so what happens with that is with a stub nib, especially if you're not used to using any kind of a stub nib, I'm not assuming whether you are or not. You didn't say whether you have experience with stubs, so I'm just making a blanket statement. If you're not familiar with stubs, you know, a normal fountain pen will be a little bit more forgiving in terms of how much it rotates, the pen rotation in your hand. A finer stub, though, or really any kind of stub, you know, it's kind of flat at the tip. So if you rotate the pen, you're kind of lifting up the pen slit in between those tines off the page. Or if you like have it like this, you know, a ball fountain pen tip is going to be more forgiving in terms of rotation. Stub is going to be fatter. I don't know how to do a stub, but you know, a stub is, if you lift it up, you're going to be dragging the corner of that stub and you're going to break the capillary action. So that's one thing that could be breaking up the flow, is if you're rotating it in your hand as you're writing, you may not even notice if you are or not. You may be doing it unintentionally. But that's one thing with people with stubs, you got to get used to them. And with a finer stub, it's even harder because the rotation's not as obvious. That could be one thing that's breaking up just your writing habit itself. Another thing is platinum carbon black. That's a pigmented ink. That is going to give you some flow issues in some pens more than others. I actually haven't used that ink in that pen as a combination before, but I imagine that some people are doing that because it's a sketching pen. You know, it's a pen that a lot of sketching people want to use. Carbon black is a very popular ink for artists and sketchers and stuff. So, you know, that ink itself, you got to maintain it, flush it out a lot. You got to make sure it's not going to dry out in that pen. I'm finding the Super 5 pen doesn't seal like 100%. So if you're in a drier kind of environment, especially wintertime, you know, you got, you know, heat going and it's really dry, your pen might dry out a little bit more. You get an ink like that can give you flow issues when it's dry. Combine that with a rotation thing, you could be seeing what you're seeing there. So there's a lot of different factors going on, so I can maybe just give you a little bit of context there. All right, I have one last question about Stormy Gray that I didn't get back to. Well, I can answer it real quick. MKB on Facebook. My battery's about to die. I'm getting a notice. So, Jerbon Stormy Gray, gold on the bottom of the bottle. Does it need to be shaken up? Yes. Shake the living crap out of your Jerbon Stormy Gray. That is your answer to that question. So, that's all for this week. I'm taking a week off next week for Christmas, and then I'll be back January. I'm going to give you a question of the week. What is a holiday tradition that you do every year? Whether it's Christmas, you know, Hanukkah, whatever, Kwanzaa, you know, whatever it is that you celebrate. I'm just curious to know, what is some holiday traditions that you always do every year? Post it in the comments. I'd love to know. Hope you have a great 2 weeks here. Hope you had a wonderful 2014. I'm happy to come back in 2015. Go at it even harder. Really excited. So be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. You can get notices of all my videos. And check out gouletpens.com. It's a little late for Christmas, but you know, you can always go browse and go check things out. Hope you have a wonderful Christmas and Merry Christmas. Yeah, wonderful Christmas, Merry Christmas. Sure, whatever, whichever one. Yeah, that's about it. So thanks for listening on this one, and right on.